So I was thinking to myself today, now that the Sony FX3 is out, what is the purpose of the a7S III? And should you even consider buying an a7S III at all anymore now that the FX3 is out? I'm gonna talk about my thoughts and kind of the main differences between these two cameras and why I think it doesn't make much sense, in my opinion, to buy this if you're considering the two. Let's jump into it. So as you know, a few months ago, I switched to the a7S III as my everyday vlog camera, and we just got rid of all our C200s to go to a new system. And a lot of people have been asking, did I switch to all a7S IIIs or did I get the FX3s? This video is not to answer that question, but more to talk about the actual reality of where these two cameras sit, in my opinion. The a7S III is absolutely an amazing camera, and by far the best camera that I've ever owned in terms of overall usability, performance, specs. It's just an incredible camera. But when they announced the FX3, I was really confused, like a lot of people, because they basically just took every aspect of the a7S III, put it in a different body, and added a couple of features that really are super important features that I always kind of wanted in the a7S III, and the price is not that much different. So it got me thinking, would I even recommend that anyone get an a7S III now that this option is available? There is only one feature on the a7S III entirely that I feel like could be important to certain people, and that is the electronic viewfinder. That is the only thing that the FX3 does not have, and I think for good reason, which I'll touch on. But other than that, every aspect of what you get in this a7S III is in the FX3, plus additional options in the FX3. So unless an electronic viewfinder is incredibly important to you, which I'm going to say I don't personally think it's a huge deal, other than the rare times that maybe you want to look at it in direct sunlight because the screen might be a little hard to see, I have a feeling that that's probably not a game-changing feature. And if you're not a photographer who normally looks through a viewfinder when they shoot photos, and because this really isn't designed for photos, I feel like that should be something that's not really a big factor to most people. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm just not someone that uses the electronic viewfinder that often, so it's not a huge deal to me. I'm going to talk about 4 things that really separate these two cameras in terms of what you're essentially paying for and why I think it's a no-brainer that this camera does make more sense. So no question, one of the biggest feature differences on the FX3, and it's an obvious one, is this handle and the fact that it has XLR inputs available directly in the handle. Now, Sony does make an XLR-based unit for the a7S III, but it mounts directly to the shoe mount on the top of the viewfinder, and it's kind of somewhat flimsy looking, and really it's being held on by nothing but that shoe mount. Now, I think that that's a kind of a risky way to have that, because if you look at the weight and the way that the cables would be pulling down on the XLR, it feels very flimsy, and I wouldn't really recommend that for running gun stuff because you have to worry about it disconnecting or even just breaking in general. What they did with the FX3 is not just integrate that handle and that XLR built into it, but because of the fact that they put an a7S III in basically a cage-like shell in the FX3, which the Cineline series of cameras from Sony does, but because of that reason, they're able to integrate this handle and directly screw mount it to the actual unit itself. So instead of it all being held on by just the shoe mount itself, it's being held on with screws and a very solid body that makes this very reliable and safe. It's not going anywhere. You don't have to worry about it messing up. As you can see, screw mounts on both sides of the actual unit itself, which allows it to be very secure on the actual camera. Now, when it comes to audio, this is one of the biggest reasons that I'm saying these kind of, in my opinion, level out to be the exact same cost, if not cheaper, with the FX3. Let's just say, for example, you buy an a7S III. You now need to make sure you have audio as a source. So, with anything, you're going to need audio, obviously, but if you want to add audio to this unit and you're using anything other than just your standard on-camera microphone, or even like a Sennheiser wireless or a Rode Go wireless or something, and you're plugging directly into the input here, Other than that, you don't have other options to be able to record higher quality mics like a shotgun mic into the A7S III. So naturally, you would have to buy some sort of external recorder. Even the cheapest external recorder that I maybe would even recommend to someone would be something like the H4n of some sort. Even that is $200 or $300, I think, to purchase. And right away, you're almost to the same price as just having this. And now you have an external unit that you have to record to and then sync up the audio in post. Obviously, that process is very easy to do these days, but it still is another process. Or you have to buy the XLR unit for this, which retails for $600. So you're now $200 more than the FX3, and you have a unit that's somewhat flimsy and a unit that is not nearly as integrated as this is. Now, one thing to note when it comes to the audio unit that you buy for the A7S III, it is $600, so like I said, it's about $200 more than this would be combined. But this one that you can buy separately for the A7S III does include a microphone. So it is kind of evening itself out that you get kind of a $200 microphone with it. It's not the best microphone in the world, but anytime you get a free mic with a unit is great. So I think it's definitely a better microphone than some people might have by default, but I wouldn't make that kind of be the difference maker of why you specifically want to get this rig or that secondary rig for this. But that is one thing to note, $600 for this, included in this. This one has a mic, this one's just the handle and the unit itself. And because video really is going to be the primary reason that you buy an A7S III, if you're a video content creator, audio is a big deal. And having it integrated with the camera, to me, is a huge, huge selling point. And what they also did that makes it very convenient for a lot of people in the cinema world is that they put mounts, typical 1/4-20 type of mounts that allow you to mount things just like you would do on a cage. They have these mounts cleverly placed all over the place. They have one on the side, they have two on the handle up top, they have an additional one here. If you take the handle off, there's even more there. And it allows you to basically mount anything you want on it. So if you want to mount monitors, or if you want to mount additional things that you would use as external devices, this is basically an A7S III with a cage that allows you to mount all those things without having to worry about any sort of additional cage or accessory to make those things possible. On the XLR unit, you have two full-size XLR inputs as well as a little miniature mic input that is very commonly seen obviously on the cameras directly, so you could plug an additional microphone into there. And on the other side you have full audio controls, so you can adjust all your gain, you can adjust line level input, mic level input, your dBs, you can have a low cut filter, you can adjust them individually. You have 3 different inputs there directly on it. Now what I love that Sony did is that if you remove this handle, you can still plug that directly into the camera or just use the camera's built-in microphones for reference audio. I absolutely love that because occasionally companies will make this integrated handle have the microphone attached to it, and if you don't have the actual whole, handle rig on there, you don't have a way to even just capture scratch audio. And that's a really nice feature because if you were using the FX3 for something like even a vlog, you then have an even smaller unit than the A7S III, because realistically, when you account for the fact that there's no electronic viewfinder, the direct angle behind that is very small, almost more like an A6400 or an A7C without the electronic viewfinder. And once again, if the viewfinder is not important to you, well, having that extra space on the top of the camera is great. It actually makes the rig even smaller than the A7S III. Now, when you look at these cameras side by side, you can see that the actual FX3 is a wider and thicker base, specifically because of the next feature I'm going to talk about, the fact that it has an internal cooling fan and heat sink to allow that heat to escape. But it's not a huge difference. You can absolutely feel a little bit of a difference in the actual handle when you hold it, but I think it's a very, very comfortable exchange for that extra thickness because it feels really, really, really good in the hand. I think the A7S III also feels really nice in the hand, but this extra thickness and just a little bit extra wideness on the body, you can see if you look at them straight down how the actual grip is longer on the FX3. But it feels really nice when you actually are using it, which I love. But that takes us to the second thing that is a really welcomed feature, specifically on a cinema line camera, and that is the fact that, as you see, it now has a built-in cooling fan and heat sink to remove the heat from the actual camera. Now, the amazing thing about the a7S III is that, as you've seen from probably hundreds of reviews on the internet, as well as all the experience I've had, I have never once in all the time I've used this camera ever gotten a heat warning whatsoever. Overheating seems to be a literally non-existent issue when it comes to the a7S III, which is amazing. But here's what I'll say. No one has tested yet the a7S III in extreme hot weather conditions, including myself. So let's just say you are a wedding filmmaker, or you're someone that is filming some outdoor events for an extended period of time. We don't really know quite yet how the a7S III might perform in those types of environments. But at least knowing that there's a built-in heatsink and fan on the FX3 is amazing, because there are times that I record events indoors or outdoors where I'm doing an event where I'm recording for maybe 6-7 hours at a time. And at least knowing that I have that fan in there gives me an additional peace of mind, knowing even if this thing has amazing, overheat resistance, this thing's gotta be even better because you have a fan that's keeping it cool. That's really, really a huge, huge feature. Now, as you can see, the screen itself is still the exact same screen. It still flips out the same way, front-facing screen when you want it, which is also still great for people that do their own content on YouTube or anywhere like that, because having that flip-out screen obviously these days seems like a no-brainer. It's awesome that they still included that. That's a great, great feature. Another nice perk of this handle, other than just XLRs, is the fact that it now makes getting low shots even easier, because when you flip this out, just like any camera that has a handle, when you are down low shooting shots, this obviously is much more comfortable than going like this or holding it really low like we've done in the past. It also makes just carrying the camera a lot nicer. Not that that's like a selling point, but when you are doing run and gun stuff, or you're just sitting around and you're not shooting, I love being able to hold it like this. It's just much more comfortable than it is holding a camera like this, like we're all used to. I don't have any sort of straps or keep anything that I have on me to hold it, so I'm always just holding a camera. So having that handle is a nice, really nice little perk of just having it, other than the fact that it does have built-in XLRs. So you have built-in XLRs for audio, a built-in handle to be able to quickly carry it and get low shots with it. You have the integrated cooling fan and heat sink to be able to not worry about overheating whatsoever. Another feature that I love that to most people might not be a big deal are recording tally lamps, I think they call them. The red lights that you see when you are recording. These lights right here, light on the front, light on the top, light on the back, very visible to see. Now you may say to yourself, that's not that big of a deal to me. I've never had those and I don't really know why you'd think that's a big feature. Let me tell you why. If you are someone who regularly shoots with more than one person, meaning you are working with a crew, or maybe just like myself, who I normally have at least one other shooter with me, the amount of times that we go to shoot and start a shoot and I need to just double check, are we all recording? When we use the C200s for the last year and a half, all I have to do is look over, I can see lights on their camera in red, and I know they're recording, we're good to go. We use the a7S III for the last kind of couple of weeks, and we are so used to seeing those lights that I would always have to, before every single time we shot, say, are you recording? Are you recording? Are you recording? Okay, we're good. That's one more thing that I don't really want to have to worry about. I'd rather be able to look over, see those lights recording, and know that we are good to go. Also, our clients who have shot with us for the last year also are used to that. They're used to being able to look at the camera and know that it's recording, to know if they can start a takeover, or if they are doing something and they're not really sure if everyone's recording or whatever. They're used to it. So we actually had someone on the very first shoot that we did with these say, oh, I didn't see the red light. I didn't know you were recording. And I kind of thought in my head, interesting how they actually were picking up on red light means recording. That's kind of a nice feature. So it's not that it's a necessary feature, not that it's something you couldn't live without, but still, from a cinema perspective, from a video perspective, one that you're used to on a professional job set, having that light, really nice and convenient. I like it. So once again, to recap, you get XLR units, built-in handle, an a7S III in a cage with tons of mounting points that is really convenient for mounting accessories. You get that built-in cooling fan to not prevent overheating whatsoever, and you get those red tally recording lamps, which I think are a cool thing. So none of those things by themselves are necessarily like a deal breaker, but when I look at it and I compare all those things, to me it seems like a no-brainer of why you would choose this camera over the A7S III. Now, it's another whole conversation whether the FX3 is better than another type of camera or something different like the C70 or something that is more in the price range. That's another whole video in itself. This video is just specifically to say why I think that if you are going to spend under $4,000 and you are thinking about getting the A7S III today as a filmmaker of any sort, to me, it seems like the FX3 makes more sense in every aspect. I would assume that someone spending $3,500 in the A7S III, $400 difference is not a deal breaker, and if you have the extra $400 to spend, this camera is quite the deal. But I hope this was helpful because I know there's been a lot of videos on the internet explaining the difference between them, and the good thing is they're not that different, but worth a little bit more money. Just my opinion. What's yours?